Hello, and welcome to today's discussion regarding culture and its significance in psychotherapy. Our focus population today will be Native Americans. I'm Michelle Tucker, your moderator for this discussion. I hope you learn a lot. Why are cultural issues important in psychotherapy overall? Well, to begin with, culture shapes us consciously and subconsciously. Who we are, what we do, possibly how we think about things are all aspects of our lives influenced by culture, whether we realize it or not. Culture influences the type, amount, and if people seek psychotherapy. Understanding cultural influences and issues that arise help us to direct the best strategies and psychotherapies that have the most positive impact on those of a certain culture. Meaning, we need to understand what may be important to that culture, what prevents them from seeking help, and perhaps some of the most common misconceptions that they have about a certain type of therapy in order to pick the best therapy for them and create the biggest impact. When we incorporate cultural aspects, we address the person as a whole. We are looking at every possible influence on their life, and doing so can increase patient and therapist trust. What cultural issues surround processing of trauma for this population? Well, as you may or may not be aware, Native Americans have been going through a lot of trauma, mostly in the past, but still also in the present. They faced and continue to face discrimination by society for their culture and beliefs. Trauma inflicted upon them throughout American history has created mistrust and resentment towards government and Western medicine. Historical and current trauma within Native American populations has affected many generations, meaning things that have happened to grandparents, great grandparents have been passed down throughout the years, creating a continuum of distrust and perhaps trauma that has never had a chance to be brought to light, healed, and or absorbed into the culture. What are some factors impacting access, engagement, and the use of psychotherapy after trauma for this population? Well, for starters, Native American populations do have a high percentage of poverty. They don't have access, they don't have providers, just regular providers, let alone specially trained providers. They do have feelings of pride and cultural promotion of solving their own problems according to tribal rules. These are some factors that may influence them when it comes to psychotherapy. Even though they experience trauma, they may not have a way to seek help for it. Also, there is a lack of advocacy for psychotherapy among their own people, utilizing such things as tribal healers and other traditions that are not generally found in Western medicine. Unfortunately, Native Americans have the highest rates of violence against women. They have a high rate of child abuse, neglect, and traumatic injuries among ethnic groups in the United States. They are a very vulnerable population. A lot of negative things happen within their own culture that causes trauma. Trauma does create a tendency to create more trauma. It's a cyclic response, perpetuating the cycle of trauma. Some things about the Native American culture that I'd like to highlight are that the family unit is central. Elders make a lot of decisions and influence a lot of decisions. The society is a lot of the times male dominated. It is very private, and there are many rules and traditions that are continually upheld through hundreds of years. So they're not quick to modernize anything. They're not looking at how to solve problems necessarily in the 21st century, but rather based on very old traditions and rules. And often they live in multi generational households. So, influences of elders as well as respect for elders may cause some families to not be able to incorporate more modern ways to address trauma and accept psychotherapy, for example. They usually do not promote asking outsiders for help. They believe in spirituality and they are into finding peace within themselves, being one with nature. Economically, they do lack compared with other ethnic groups. They have fewer resources for medical and psychological treatments overall. COVID was a great example of a population that did not get as much treatment and news media coverage regarding COVID pandemics and COVID infection treatments, testing, etc. Native Americans may prefer to see a healer or someone with specific ability to cure disease within their own community, again, based on tradition and things that they've done for a very long time. They're not as familiar with Western medicine. They're not familiar with psychotherapy and have strong distrust in institutions and such services. The strong distrust in the institutions plays a huge role in trusting the process of psychotherapy and anything that they could deem as potentially more discriminatory or as not helpful or outside of their cultural beliefs. Native Americans may have language barriers due to lack of education or understanding of Western medicine. Other info to take note of is that American Indians continue to face significant discrimination and disparities in mental health and health care. This is still going on in today's society. A statistic from 2020 states that 1 out of 9, which is approximately 11.4% of American Indians, had an unmet need for mental health services. And this is more than any other racial or ethnic group. And among high schoolers who are American Indians or Native Americans, they're more likely to be bullied on school property, 32% versus 20% among overall youth. 21% of Native American youth reported experiencing online bullying. That's a lot, a significant difference from 15% of youth overall. It's really important to study this population because they actually are people who will influence both the past and the future of American society. They are people who continually exist within the United States with a very long history of cultural practices and ancient traditions that are trying to coexist with people who seemingly are always trying to modernize things. So when we look at psychotherapy and the needs of the Native American population, it's really important to understand their culture and to respect them and understand the struggles that they are facing. As with any group, trust between the psychotherapist and the patient is extremely vital to successful treatment and or even the person opening up and presenting their issues. So when we look at how culture plays a significant role in psychotherapy, we have to understand that culture is not always a proponent of psychotherapy. It actually can be an inhibitor. And so we must be sensitive to culture and we must learn as much as we can about the people that we are trying to help.